Thank you, Edward. You are always so kind. And I would like to say thank you to all the scientific committee for the invitation to be here to speak with you. And of course, to local organization. You are so kind. You make everything so easy. And thank you very much. I feel very welcome. And thank you for you all who are here. You could be sleeping, but you decide to come, and I thank you for coming. Hope that what I'm going to tell you makes any sense for you and help to think about how can we help children and parents, because not just children need help, but parents also need help. So I will start my presentation. And I'm going to tell you how to organize the presentation. So the first part of the conference is about how the high conflict between parents or moderate conflict impacts in child brain. So I'm going to speak not a lot, of course, but I will try to do the bridge with adverse childhood experiences in children and look to the impacts in two pathways. I will speak about one of the pathways much more linked to cortisol and the other pathway much more linked to adrenaline. It's two different pathways that we found. After, I'm going to think with you about what research tells us, not just about short-term impact, but long-term impact. And this is something that we need to worry about because usually professionals and parents forget long-term impact. And long-term impact is huge, as you all know, of course. And in the end, I hope I will reflect that we are here as a community of colleagues. What are the protective factors that we need to increase with intervention? And what are the risk factors that if you don't can reduce, at least reduce the impact of the risk? How can you buffer the risk factors? And after, I will speak about how we work with parents to help them to understand what the behavior they are having between them impacts the brain, because some parents don't realize that what they do impacts the structure, not just the function of the brain. And this is very important because for me that works with parents, my work with parents tells me that when they saw what they are doing to the brain, it changed everything. Because usually what you say is, okay, she's suffering or he's suffering, he's having problems in school, but with time, things will change. No, because the structure of the brain sometimes don't change. Because if you are speaking about adverse childhood experiences, don't change. So hope it makes some sense for you. What I thought that will be interesting to speak with you. And first thing that I would like to say is about what is high conflict. And for us to speak in high conflict, there are three things that they need to be present. Not just to be frequent, because I can have frequent conflict. This is not high conflict. But is the intensity, of course, needs to be high. And the third thing that we need to think about is the way you solve it, because I can have intense, frequent, but have a very healthy way to solve it. And if I have, it's not high conflict. It's only high conflict when the way I solve conflict is not a way that serves the needs of children. is not a way that is positive. So the way I solve it is, as you know, in the hostile way, destructive way. I put children in the middle of the conflict. So when I speak about high conflict, and it incorporates what we call adverse childhood experience, if this high conflict happens during the 6-8 first years of life of children, it needs to have these 3 different characteristics. About high conflict and about the impact in brain, of course, there are people that knows much more about this than I do. And I choose for you and for inspiring my talk to you, the work that is, as you, lots of you know, that is developed in the Harvard University Child Center about impact of adverse childhood experience in structure of the brain. And when we look for this stress experience, that is a stress that is high, is chronic, chronic, is high, and is not solved, we are speaking from a different concept of tolerable stress. Sorry, my English. Stress that we all have in this room, and that I have more in this moment than you, because I'm speaking. So my cortisol levels are higher than yours, I think. We all have stress, but this is normal stress. But there is another type of stress, that is what we call tolerable stress. What is this? It's something that happens in some periods of my life, is very high. It happens during some periods of my life. Imagine during my parents' divorce or my parents' separation, but I can deal with it. So it doesn't change structure. Why? Because I have ways to deal with. I learned ways to deal with, or my parents helped me. When it is intense, when it is toxic, this doesn't happen. And what happened, and I will show you how this happened, the structure of the brain is different from our structure. At least I think it is different from our structure. We never know your brain. I can't see your brain, so I don't know if we have our brains in this room. But maybe in future there will be a way I can see your brains. You can see my brain. So we need to think about that. Why? Because, as you all know, the impact in health is long. People die more. People have much more disease, and I will speak about that in a few minutes. And how this happens? Okay. What happens is that when you have toxic stress, you have 2 pathways that it impacts our brain. We have the pathway that we call hypothalamic pituitary adrenocortical way, that is linked to cortisol. So when a child is between parents, when they fight in the silent or in the active way, the cortisol level ups and stays in toxic stress, doesn't lower. But there is another pathway, and the other pathway is linked to the sympathetic system, and is much more linked to what we call the adrenomedullary system that produces adrenaline. So we speak about cortisol and we speak about adrenaline, 2 different pathways in the brain. What is the problem? The problem is that these 2 pathways increase the connections in an area of the brain that they don't want that have connections, strong connections. And of course, it is the amygdala. And because we increase the amygdala, the connections in the amygdala increase, the connections in prefrontal brain that make you wise, like the goodness, teens, yes, make you wise, make you feel compassion, make you forgive, make you believe that you need to lower down your conflict. The connections will be lower. So we have much more connections in the amygdala area than we have in the prefrontal and frontal cortex. What is the problem about that? Problem is that that pathways of the amygdala, as you know, is linked to fear, is linked to anxiety, is linked to a part of brain very important in learning and in memory, that is the hypothalamus. So what happens is that the brain areas that I want to increase in childhood and in young people, they don't. So what happened is that what they have to do with reasoning, learning, memory, control, self-regulation decrease. And it's why you are seeing one of the impacts is this, the child starts with behavioral problems, or the opposite, child start to internalize, and we'll speak about that in a few minutes. So the big problem is that if this happens in the first 8 years of life, the impact is much huge. That if happens after the 8 first years of life, because the brain is a structure, and because it's a structure, is dynamic, and is more dynamic in what concerns the way it organized. The architecture of the brain is much more stronger. We build it much more in the first years of life than after that. Of course, you can speak about teenagers because, as you know, during the teenagers years, the brain again, it's why they make our life crazy sometimes, just sometimes. Another thing that we know now, today, in nowadays, is that this high conflict not just change brain, but change genes. So we know that we have epigenetic changes. It means that the genes, they have what we call a receptor in the genes, the glucocorticoid receptor. It changes in the area again of hippocampus. It's why all the things that child needs to do and they have the right to do, she can't. She can't, because the brain and the cells are working in the opposite. It's like you tell me go, but you keep me from going. So child can't do that. And sometimes the impact is not in this moment. You can't see the impact. Sometimes we have some studies that show us that change in genes impacts in the adult age in psychopathology. So you see children that they look like they are dealing. They don't have externalizing or internalizing signs that worries you. But when they became adults, they start with depression, anxiety, ideation of suicide, things like that have a relationship with this gene change. Okay. How can you help parents? How can you help them to understand that stress impacts brain? Stress is not just about, okay, you are not feeling well. No, stress is about life. Stress is about not just emotional well-being. Stress is about physical well-being too. And usually, at least the way you work with parents is to show how this happens in the brain. And we show them what happens in their brain for them realize what they are teaching to the children when they put children in the middle. So it's a 2-minute video clip that I will show. I'm not showing the program. It's not the goal of my talk, but I will show that video because I think it's very, it tells us how it's so easy to explain these things to parents. And some parents, when they saw this video, they start to cry. And I had a mother that she told me, I never thought about that, never. I never thought that stress can change my brain and explain why I'm always fighting with my ex-husband. And I never thought that this impacts the brain of my child. And so it is a pathway that you can follow or not. It's an option. Of course, there are others. So can you please put the video? Thank you.
Stress starts in something called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis, which is composed of the 3 organs that produce most of the hormones in your body. One of its functions is to control your reaction to stress. When you get into a stressful situation, your HPA axis is activated, releasing a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is a powerful hormone that floods your body in high-stress moments, triggering it to take immediate, self-preserving action. But over time, high levels of cortisol can weaken your brain function by reducing the electrical signals in your hippocampus. This is the organ in your brain that connects stress, whether it's mild and manageable or overwhelming and toxic, to learning and memory. Chronic, daily stress strengthens the neural connections in the amygdala, the part of your brain that controls fear. Unfortunately, the more you repeat a negative thought pattern, like fear or anger, the stronger and deeper those connections become. Chronic stress causes these connections to grow stronger, which produces even higher levels of cortisol. This decreases your brain's ability to handle stress. It can also impair your brain's ability to receive information properly, such as telling the difference between a serious and not so serious threat. Another problem is that high levels of cortisol from chronic stress can actually damage your hippocampus, reducing memory and emotional control. Daily, chronic stress might make it more difficult to learn and remember things, and can also lead to very serious mental complications such as depression, memory loss, and a reduced ability to feel emotions. And these same deteriorations can happen in children's brains, where there's greater impact because their brains are still developing and growing.
Okay, it's just a small part of the work we do with parents to show how conflict impacts. So, about impact. Okay, we spoke already about lots of impacts, but I tried to bring you some more recent work, and I based my reflection in this guide. That guide is truly very inspirational for people who works like us, not just in research, but also in intervention about the impact. And when we think about the impact, we need to think that we have 3 different types of, 4, because the other one is in the other slide. We need to be aware about emotional impact that, as you know, when child is a baby, very young, we feel stress because they don't sleep, they don't eat, they cry a lot, they don't self-regulate. So in babies, what we found is babies that are very active or babies that are very slowly, babies that have depression. As you know, baby can have depression. When we think about teenagers, everything changed because the way they show stress is in a very different way, because they feel that they don't count. I don't have any value. That person that should care, that I'm the more important person in their lives, they don't care about me. So I don't have any value. And when all teenagers feel that, but teenagers who are in between conflicts between parents, they feel much more. So, as you know, when we feel that in the teenager years, the probability for us to do things that can harm ourselves, like addiction, sexual behavior that is not healthy, and things like later on, not later on, but in teenager years, we have negative peer relationships. They are teenagers, girls and boys, that in fact they can't be part of the groups that help them to grow up in a healthy way. So when we think about the social relationships and interpersonal, not just with me, but with the others, a question that research shows is the awful, but you know, of course, knew that generation after generation will find someone with this kind of relationship in family. So the intergenerational way to deal with conflicts will stay unless we help people to deal with that. So future relationships are, of course, sometimes not a source of pleasure, but they are a source of suffering. Schools. Those children, they have much more difficulties in schools. And it's why we need to work with teachers. We need to prevent, but we also need to do intervention. We need to help teachers to understand that student that is in that chair, the brain doesn't help him to stay focused and to participate. And teachers need to have tools. And first tool is to be empathic. Second tool is to help, because they need to learn. It's not enough to be empathic. Of course, about long-term health, mental health, and long-term physical health, you always know that. But the long-term physical impact in this moment is we have much more research linking things like diabetes, things like inflammatory disease that we never linked to what we lived when we are children. The eye conflict, now we know that is a link between, can be, because we are going to speak about that. What is the risk? The risk is if this happens in micro and exo and meso and macro contexts where there are other risk factors. Yesterday, our colleagues from, I don't think they are here, they present a nice research about social capital, and this is about that. When this high conflict adds to poverty, when this high conflict adds to lower economic conditions, when this high conflict links with parenting, that is not the parenting that answer to the child needs, but is arch or is inconsistent parenting, the risk increase a lot. So another group of risk factors is factors related with mental health of the parents, and the gender is also a risk for some behaviors. Fathers are more likely to withdraw or to be hostile in the relationship, because the brain have different, the amount and testosterone have different impacts in the brain of women and men. Not all, but the tendency is that. So gender can be a risk. Child, of course, younger, and all the children, they are different. Younger children blame much more themselves. So guilty is much more present in young children. And with older children, you find much more behavioral problems, because they don't feel guilty. They feel the others should take care. The others are the problem, not him. Of course, temperament, again, is something that is a lottery. When we born, we didn't choose our temperament. The only way we can do is to choose the way you are going to live with it. And children who born with more stress hormones, children who have a more difficult temperament have more problems if they are in between conflict between parents. Gender. Girls and boys, research points that we see there a difference. Girls internalize more, okay? And why? Because they feel the conflict as something that put the harmony of a life, the harmony of the family in risk. Boys tend to see things much more, something related with him, and it's why they externalize also more. And social support. Of course, all the research show us that the biggest protective factor is that we give that child a safe, dependable relationship to give her or he support, even in children who are vulnerable. So if father and mother come to that because they are in high conflict, they need to understand that they need to create conditions for the child to have that support from grandmother, grandfather, uncle, the early years teachers. They are key professionals. Why? Because attachment, some of our colleagues yesterday spoke about attachment. We know today that not just mother and father are figures that I attach. Early years teachers, they can be a source of safe attachment. It's why we need to give training to teachers who work with children between 0 and 3 years old, because they need to be a source of support for those children. And I tell me, oh, I need to finish. Okay. No? No? Okay, thank you. So, sorry. What can we do? Okay, we need to help parents. Children too, but we need to focus in parents. I don't care what kind of thing we do to help parents, but we need to do something. Some people think therapy or counseling is what works. Okay, do that. Some people like me works much more in psychoeducation. Okay, do that. Some people are better and do better mediation. Okay, information and advice is not enough. Not enough. We all in this room have information about where you should be sit in this moment. I should be like that. I'm not. And I have that information. Why I'm not? Because information, that just change behavior. The only thing that change behavior is emotions. So it's why we need to work with emotions. Doesn't matter in which way. Our research showed that it's fantastic in our days how some parents are much more sensitive to face-to-face and others to online. So people say, oh no, we need face-to-face. No, some parents hate face-to-face. And for them to have online support, phone support is something that is fantastic. If possible, volunteer. If not possible, they should be obliged. I don't have any question about that. I think first step is to open the possibility, and if they don't, we need to speak with them and say, okay, look what you are doing to your children. Look what you are doing to the whole society and community. You have to. I don't let people destroy my community. Why should I let people destroy the life of the others? So in the, of course, trustful relation with collaboration, always co-construction, if possible, emotional based, but we need to help parents. In Portugal, just very, very fast, the program I work is only based in the videos of children in between, but we developed a group format program, a 8 weeks group format program. Face-to-face or online, parents can choose that. We help parents to do that. We give training to leaders, and in fact, we help parents to see the impact in the brain, but we also give them tools. The biggest tool we give to them is to tell them, you can kill each other. I don't have nothing to do with that, but you can't kill your child. So the focus is always help parents to understand what they are doing to the child. And this is the key factor. Parents who change is because they realize what they are doing to the children. They don't care about the other, of course, as you know. Just because I'm a researcher, I have to show you data because I work with data. One fantastic thing, okay, is only near 50 parents, but I would like to share that with you, is that we found a reduction between before the intervention and after in the high conflict, but not all high conflict. Only the high conflict we involve the child. So what we learned is parents still in conflict, but they don't put children in the middle. And in the co-parenting relationship, we found the same effect. Parents sometimes will never cooperate. Some parents can't cooperate, but they don't make the life of the child crazy. They understand what we call the big rules that both families have to have, and they need to be very few, and what we call small rules, the rules that are completely different in my house and the house of my ex-partner. And we found that reduction in co-parenting. Sorry, I didn't put I put, but in the other slide that I didn't send. The co-ante show us that is a not high effect size, but it is moderate effect size, is 0.57. It's okay for a small sample and just preliminary results. Other thing we looked, burnout. Why parental burnout because we know that divorce with high conflict increase parental burnout. Parental burnout is increasing in the whole world, as you know, because we have, how can I say, a social risk factor. We tell parents an ideal of parenting that is not possible to achieve for human beings. And because parents have lots of information, parents are very critical to themselves, and this increases the stress. And if they start to become exhausted, if they start to become what I feel doesn't matter to me, it's time to get help. But because maybe they are suffering from parental burnout. And what we saw in the program is when ask parents, if you compare your burnout related to parenting before and after, do you think it increased? Is still the same or decrease? And as you can see, we have age percentage of parents, more than 60, that say, my parenting burnout decrease. So the stress they feel in the relationship with child, not the other child, it decrease. So I think good news. Notwithstanding, we need to be careful. We can't speak never about causes. And we have children that live in high conflict and they don't develop stress-related disorders. Some. Because there are some protective factors that they have. So you can't say they all, you can't say that. But we know for sure that animals and the human studies show us that care, nurturing care, consistent care, predictable care, is the key to prevent and to do intervention when prevention doesn't work. So if people ask me, if you have money, what do you do? If I have money, I will increase positive parenting. Because if you increase positive parenting, when parents divorce, they will not put children in between because they care about the child. And the amygdala is not enough to do that. Of course, some days I will feel crazy, but I stop and I say, what are you doing? You can't do that. So positive parenting, not positive in the sense it is positive. I don't like the word positive, but as you know, it's a political word, and we start to use it because parenting is not always positive, and caring, nurturing parenting sometimes is negative. Sometimes I lose control, sometimes I do things I shouldn't. So this is my conclusion, and thank you for your attention. Muito obrigada. Thank you.
We have a little bit of time for questions. I'll open it up to the audience. Alex, and we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
We're just going to give you the microphone. Right.
Thank you, Maria Filomena. That was really powerful. It's also starting to make me think about some potential conclusions to my own talk that I'm giving later. I'm not trying to plug the talk at all, but that something around relational proximity and lower rates in children with divorce anyway that I'll be talking about later. But I'm starting to wonder, trying to join the dots and making the links. But it leads me to my question, which is, this is around high conflict and the changes that can take place in brain development around high conflict. But how do you make that causal connection between high conflict and, for example, a traumatic event, you know, for a loss of a parent or a divorce? So what I'm trying to say is
Yes.
it's the sort of the longitudinal nature of this process.
Yes.
And could a traumatic event have the same sort of impact? And if so, then how do you make that sort of causal link between that sort of ongoing high conflict? Does that make sense?
Yes, completely. In fact, it's not me, it's research. As you know, we have 8 things that could have this label of trauma. To have a parent in jail is one of them. High conflict in parents is another of them. To lose a mother or father. To live with a mother addict, father or mother. To live with domestic violence. We know that the pathway in the brain is similar. So it's not me, in fact, it's studies. And as you know, neuropsychology is increasing. I think there is a positive side of that, and there is a negative side of that. The positive side of that is that we know much more about brain than we did 2 years ago or 3 years ago. The dark side of that is that we lose what makes us human. And we start to think into intervention that some of them could be related with gene manipulations, stimulating the brain with some electrical things, and we lose what the children need. That is a caring relationship. So it's research, but thank you for your...
Thank you.
I think there is one in the back, and after you.
Yeah. One response to the things you said would be, let's take away the parent who causes the conflict, and that will solve all the problems. What would your response to that be?
Okay, my response will be, of course not. Never. Never. No, my response will be help parents. Help parents, and if during some time in very, very high conflict, I need to take the child, I will need to take the child with very careful, in a very careful way, and keep the child in family. I will say the child can spend a week with grandmother or a week with a very special uncle, but see the parents. Never. Parents, as you know, of course you know that, children who are putting in the residential care when they are very young and they stay there for all life, the first thing they do when they became with autonomy is to do that, is looking for the parents. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your explanation. Almost the same question. In Japan, we've got a neuroscientist who denies the shared parenting, who says the same logic that the high conflict can damage children's brain. So let's cut off one parent, then stop high conflict. So, but this time you explained in different way how to solve high conflict. So what is the difference, and is there any possibility that cutting off one parent can be a solution?
For me, as a person, never. For me as a researcher, I think we have a time that we need to do whatever we can to keep that child with the father and mother in the healthy. And one thing that I think that could be a risk factor is to think that healthy parenting involves cooperation between parents. And this is not true. This is a myth. Some parents will never cooperate. Never. And because we keep saying in interventions that parents have to cooperate, we are losing the opportunity to have what we can. And what we can is two people that don't kill the child, the brain, the healthy, the emotions. They don't speak with each other, okay, but they don't speak through the child. And they keep the child with prediction. Child knows what is going to happen. Child knows what she can expect. Child knows that in the father house will always eat soup. In mother house, she will never eat soup. I'm going to put the opposite, because usually they say, oh, in mother house they eat soup, in father house they don't. It's not true. Some fathers will do very nice soup and some mothers don't. So, so I think that these myths of cooperation are killing the opportunity that you have a healthy co-parenting without cooperation.
Thank you. One just more quick question. Is there any research so far that comparing the brain damage level of children of single custody and shared parenting?
No. Sorry, I don't know. It could have. I'm sure there is. I always tell my students, if you look for a research, we always find one. What I think, my opinion, is that it will be different, because pathway maybe involves other different kinds of neurotransmitters. So the architecture of the brain will be different. And there is another thing, that we shouldn't lose the positive of life. I think any human being can change at any time, but there is a limit for their change. What happens with high conflict is that I think I still have this window of change. I think, maybe I don't. And a child that lives this extreme high conflict only have that window, but she can change in that window. It's small. She needs to be aware as an adult why she reacts to some things, why she can't have close relationships with other people, why she feels fear and afraid with things that other people don't. And people needs, it's why emotions are so important. People need to understand that they are the way they are, not because they choose to be that way. It's something that is part of the way. Okay, but thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we have time for just one more question. I think Mike in the back there had his hand up.
Okay, you can speak with me after.
Yeah. Sure, sorry.
Thank you. How do you, on your 8-week program, how do you recruit the parents to join the program?
Okay. 2 years ago, the Portuguese government decided that this is an important question. They decide that law doesn't change everything. Law is needed, but we need much more than law. And so they work with my university, and we trained professionals that work in the entities, different kinds. I trained people in hospitals. I trained people in the health centers. I trained people in child protection. I trained people in schools in these principles. And it is that people who have a close relationship with parents not related with the divorce or the conflict, that sometimes are the people who present the parents, okay, I would like to have a talk with you, your child have this and that. I think you can get help. And they give the contact. Is a community, a whole community that is linked. But we also work with cards. If you have high conflict parents, as yesterday my colleague, the juiz, Pedro, the judge, he said that he works with the University of Coimbra. It is with us. But in cards, for us, is very, very difficult because they are not yet enough sensitive to work. We need to do with parents in that conflict. Doesn't matter if one is the victim, the other the aggressor. No, we need to work with both because they can still kill himself, but they don't. I wish they don't kill the child.
Okay, on that note, I'm very sorry I'll have to end the questions, but because we're just a couple of minutes away from the beginning of the parallel workshop sessions. Okay, well, maybe one very
brief question.
Let's
Let's talk about time. How many times it takes to find a good solution? Because everything happens in the time.
That question is so important, and it's why our project is about to strengthening people around the child and family before they have that answer. And if you have teachers that are sensitive, if you go to the pediatrician and is sensitive to that, if your family nurse is sensitive to that, they can help you. If your community supports you, they can help you, at least tell you, stop. And because it is your community, you don't feel so afraid. You start to think, okay, why my family nurse ask me about that? Why does my school teacher, my school, yes, the teacher of school of my child told me this about him. He's worried, and these small things sometimes, but you're right, completely right. We need fast answers, and we don't have. And I don't know, in next 10 years, maybe. Maybe. But we are here for that. Maybe in 10 years, we'll meet here again in Greece. Yes? Yes?
We'll do our
okay.